Welcome to the One Podcast, where we have beautiful conversations with beautiful humans. I am David Medina, and today I have a brother who I met, I guess, a couple years back at a social club called Archipelago here in Phoenix. Yeah, just a special brother who I've been following his journey. Just a beautiful poet. He's a speaker, coach, and now an author, which is super dope. My man Garrett Brill, G Link in the building.
Thank you for having me, bro.
Beautiful.
It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm glad that flow brought us together.
Yes, it did. That's right. That is today's topic. We are going to talk about flow. Before we get there, though, I would love if you would share just a little bit about yourself and who you are. And
Absolutely. It's always fun when people ask this because it's like, who am I? Who is Garrett Brill? And I really just feel like I am a regular, everyday person that is just doing my best to follow my heart and to do the things that make me feel alive and to make the people around me feel alive. And that is really at the core. I try to come from a place of love in every situation as best as I can. And the ways that this expresses itself through me at this point in my life is through poetry, spoken word poetry specifically. It is through coaching and consulting, and it is also just trying to, you know, be a loving awareness in any situation. And the byproduct of that is that I get to serve and I get to support people and I get to interact with beautiful humans like yourself. And so that's the way that I would describe myself in this moment.
that's beautiful, man. Are you originally from Arizona?
From California, actually.
That's what I
Grew
thought.
up in San Pedro, which is like LA Harbor.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Tell me a little bit about your early beginnings of writing, or where did that start? Where did that sort of come from?
Well, since we talked about San Pedro, let's go way back
Okay.
because what's funny, and I think it's part of my story as I've been diving into it, is I actually went to a performing arts elementary school. So from kindergarten until fifth grade, the school was performing arts magnet. So people from all over the Southern California would come to this school when parents wanted them to be involved and with art and performance. And that's why it's called a magnet. It's like that's what attracted certain people that wanted this for their family. And it's funny that I kind of don't bring this up enough, but it's funny because I actually stayed in the background. I did stage crew and video crew. I did nothing when it came to putting on the performance at the end of the year. So every Friday we had an elective, and usually that was something art related. So I was around it and I was doing it. But when it came to the performance at the end of the year, which essentially the whole last month and every Friday was dedicated to this performance, I picked stage crew to be in the backside of everything. And so I've always been around creativity. My family, my grandfather was a writer, singer, and poet. I never really knew him. He passed away when I was young, but his art lives through me, I feel, is something I've been paying attention to. And I remember my mom at a young age told me I was always a really authentic writer. She just said I always just shared from my heart whatever I did end up writing. And I would say that I've always done poetry. I used to do rap. I grew up in San Pedro, so my friends and I would just turn on music and we would try to freestyle, throughout. That's like what we did on the weekends to kill time. And so I've always been around that type of thing. But it really started to come through me in around 2015, 2016, when I really started to slow down and started to pay attention to, I call it my inner whisper and my inner voice. And that's when poetry really started to come through me, and I started to journal on a regular basis. and that's when this type of poetry and type of expression started to really come through me.
Do you have any sort of connection or have seen anything about your grandfather as far as his own art?
I do actually. My grandfather, he was a total practical mind. He was like the head of the army of engineers, and built some crazy technology for the army. When he was That's what his career was essentially an engineer for the military.
Mm.
And but he also loved music, and he would go into his bathroom and he would play music and record it in his bathtub. And those recordings, there's like hours and hours of these recordings of either old folk songs that he wrote, old poetry, fraternity songs, all of these things that meant a lot to him, he recorded. And my mother got a hold of them and put them onto CDs. And so our whole family has like five or six um, CDs of my grandfather singing. And he has this really cool, like, I mean, even just because it's on a recorder, it just has this really cool sound. And it's nostalgic. And it's funny because this is how I feel connected to him now because, when I was maybe 3 or 4, he had a really freak uh, accident, like an outpatient surgery where he essentially should have been on the golf course in the afternoon. He suddenly died.
Mm.
And now that I've been getting back into my creative spirit, I see him and feel connected to him because of it. And there's even things with like this children's book where I feel like I've gotten messages and connection with him through my expression and feeling like he's with me.
Wow, that's so beautiful to have that document of like his. Woo, that's incredible. Not a lot of people have that, you know what I mean? Like it's, for me, my with my grandparents, I don't have that kind of connection where I have something solid in this world that connects me to like who they are in that way. So that's amazing. That's super beautiful.
Yeah, and I could even tell this story because I feel like it goes with this whole theme of flow,
Yeah.
and it might open up, the next part of wherever we're going with it. But this is, one of the things I always talk about is having an open mind is one of the first things when it comes to creativity and intuition and flow. Because if I believe that I have all the answers, if I believe that everything that I've been taught throughout my life is the right way, it doesn't open up space for anything new. Every new idea in the world started from an open mind. And so I used to be a little more closed minded. I used to not believe and have trust in the things that I do. And, this is just an example where, I started sharing my poetry. You were actually a part of that. I think about you as a big part of it. There was little things that you said to me when I first started to share my expression out loud, and so thank you for that because these are some of the little whispers. I have these visions, and when I am reflected back from an outside person, something that is in resonance with something I've thought about,
Mm.
then to me those are the whispers from the universe because I believe everything is connected. So thank you.
Yeah.
And to go back to the story, I started sharing my poetry in the open mind vein of what we're talking about. My mother has always been really open to the idea of connecting to people that have passed. And my grandfather passed at a young age. My mom lost both of her siblings to cancer and one of her best friends to cancer. And so she's had to have an open mind to figure out how to process and be with these things. And I'm really grateful because I used to be closed minded to some of these things. And she went to a famous medium. There was like 40 people in her room. The guy stops to my mom and my grandmother and tells her that her husband and my mom's father was there, and said his name, and then said, pointed, because my aunt was also there, so there's three of them, points to my mom and says, your son is starting something new, and Jim wants you to know that it's going to be a great success. And when I heard, my mom left me a voicemail after that. And I'm not someone that cries. Like I'm not against it. I think it's something actually very important. And I don't want to say I'm not someone, I want to say up until now. I don't want to affirm this, but when I heard that, I started crying. And I felt connected to my grandfather. And whether you want to believe that this actually happened or whatever you want to believe about it, it it moved something in me.
Mm.
And so those are the little things that, and to me, it was a sign. It was a sign that I'm on the right path. That my grandfather felt like, some people don't even get to talk to this medium, but maybe a couple people. And that's what had to come through. And to me, that was a connection with my grandfather. And it was also a sign that I'm on the right path.
Wow. So where in your timeline were you in your life when that happened? Because I do remember you sharing with me some stories around, I'm not sure if you were traveling. There was a moment in your life where you were traveling a lot. Like you decided to follow a particular journey for yourself.
Yes.
So where did that,
So this was after this is after about 4 years of that lifestyle, and this was right when I started sharing. So maybe even around the time we met, right when I started sharing and being reflected back that people wanted to receive it. Um, this is what came through. And the other thing that's crazy about it is I had just wrote the poem that has now become my children's book, Stardust: A Journey to Remember. And I was actually having a difficult time connecting with my mom. And around this time, it was just a lot of energy, COVID, everything. And I was having a conversation with my mother, and she had said, this is the couple days before the medium. She had said that I shared that poem with her, and she felt really connected to it. And she said, you know what? I'm going to know that whenever I hear the word stardust or see the word stardust, that's going to be an opportunity for my grandfather to say her father to be connected to her. And so what was crazy is when that message came through 2 days later, what the medium had said, and my mom doesn't do this stuff all the time. This is like still a very rare moment. To me, that was a sign because when I shared that poem the first time, she's the person that named it. She decided like we should call it Stardust, and it's going to make me think of my father. And then 2 days later is when it came through. So for me, I felt that connection.
mm,
And then when that message came through, it was like, wow, Pop was there. He was there for that call.
that's incredibly powerful. Wow. So let's take a step back when we talk about flow, right? Like, when was that moment for you when you started to become aware of the consciousness of the awareness of the concept of flow, of like being in the space of like, as you say, listening to these inner whispers? Like, when did that begin for you?
Well, I think it began early on because of my mom and how she thought. But I would say, like, if you're looking for like the moment that I had a big shift in my life, it was I had been, from the age of being born until I was about 27, 28, I just kind of did what society told me to do. I got a job, I worked my way up, did everything that was checking the boxes that would say that I would be happy and successful. And so I ran this healthcare company that for 5 years, and it was a lot of energy, and it was from the outside I was very successful, but on the inside I don't even know if I truly knew it, but I just didn't feel fulfilled.
Mm.
And I decided to start getting into journaling. I decided to start meditating. And, when we're talking about this, like there was a little whisper that was saying, like, hey, you need to, these are things you want to be doing, and you need to start doing them. And so I realized that there was other things that were blocking me from doing those things, whether that be, drinking or fantasy football or watching TV. And all of those things were prohibiting me. So the first thing that the whisperer told me to do is let those things go. And so for about a year, I stopped drinking. I got rid of my cable, like DirecTV. I sent it back in. I no longer wanted it. And I filled that time with journaling, reading, and understanding these concepts that I had put to the side for so long. And during that time, I saw this trip. It was a surfing trip to Indonesia. And I decided that no matter what happens in a year from now, I'm going on that trip because for the first 5 years of building that company, I was the first employee. So not only did I not take a vacation, but we were literally open 24/7 because we took care of medically fragile children in their home and they always needed care. So we always had someone working. So I took really late phone calls. I showed up to work every day. And no matter what, when things really hit the fan, like I had to be available. So I never truly was off for those 5 years while building a pretty massive company.
Mm-hmm.
And so I take this trip and I had been diving into different books and different lessons, about inner peace and about, um, you know, trusting intuition, things like this. And about 7 days into the trip, I was just having these messages coming through that were telling me that this job and this lifestyle was no longer serving me. I had never been more sober. I had never been more connected to myself. I had never been more healthy in my whole life. And 7 days into a 2 week trip, I just, I had never really thought about leaving my job. Honestly, maybe a couple little moments of just like, hey, you know, there's more to life than this. But I hadn't sat and thought about the idea of leaving.
Mm.
And I read a book called The 10 Secrets to Success and Inner Peace by Dr. Wayne Dyer. And when I closed that book, I decided that I was going to leave it all behind.
You closed the book on both. You closed the book and you closed the book. Yeah.
I did. And there's more to that story, but I'll let you guide and see if there's any way you want to go with that.
Yeah. The idea of flow or like listening, you're essentially just listening to feedback, right? In the environment, in the spaces that you're in. I relate to that a little bit in the sense that I've been in the corporate world for a rather long time. I'll tell a quick story. But it's always been unfulfilling going to the office every single day. It's just the same old thing. There was a particular day where I was feeling a little frustrated. I was at my desk. I get up to go just take a walk. I walk through there's these sort of glass doors and they're stuck by magnets. And I walk through. Now, before all this happened, there was stuff going on internally, right? Like not happy. There was just a lot of stuff internally going on with me. I walk through this door and I take a few steps into the hallway and all of a sudden I hear a bang on the floor. I feel something on my head. And when I touch my head, there's blood. One of the magnets fell from that door and hit me on the head. Okay. I was fine. I got a couple stitches. I'm all good. However, the point of that was like, if you don't listen to these whispers, they get louder to the point of like even physical things happening, right? So to me at that point, like I started to really follow the whispers too, right? I mean, that's how I ended up here in Arizona. It was through literally that. And we get caught up in sort of the material world, but what really the reward in listening to these things is living. Like you get to live, you get to see your life unfold in a way that's incredible and in ways that you probably never imagined. Like I would never have imagined that I would live here, bro, and meet the people that I met.
I love it.
If it wasn't for those things that I was listening to and really like following through,
Absolutely. And that's a perfect, I said there's more to the story. That's a perfect example of what happened. So I closed that book. picture this. I am on a cliffside about 200 feet up from a place called Uluwatu, Padang Padang. It's one of the best surf breaks in the world. And I'm just looking over this beautiful blue ocean and close the book. And I'm like, I'm going to leave everything behind. And I call so I hadn't talked to my partner throughout the whole 7 days because I'm 16 hours ahead and it just didn't work. We had texted and things like that. I call her and I'm looking over this cliff and I'm just like, Serafina, I'm going to leave my job and I think we need to travel the world. And she was like, let's do it. And in the moment that I am announcing this and saying that we're going to change our whole life, I'm kind of laying out like with my feet up on a post, if you can picture that, and a dragonfly lands on my knee. And I look at the dragonfly, and in the moment I make eye contact, it essentially has like a seizure on the floor, so much so that I said, Serafina, hold on. And I put the phone down and I watched this dragonfly just flutter on the ground for 45 seconds. And it stops. I pick up the phone and I'm like, I think a dragonfly just died in front of me. And it had. Serafina says this to me. She says, you need to look up what a dragonfly represents. And I was like, you're right. But I was in Bali. I was so disconnected to my phone because it was one of my intentions that for the next 7 days, I didn't do that. But I was being confirmed in so many different ways that I was making the right choice for myself. And there's so many little stories over the 7 days. I'm with one of my best friends since I was 6 years old. He's with me, and I'm just getting so many little messages that even until the moment I got into the cab and started heading home was just like, you're making the right choice. Now, I'm flying home. Picture this, flying into Phoenix. I look to my left, you got Camelback, you have all the offices, and I could see my office. I could see this company that I put 5 years of my heart and soul into. At the time, we were the sixth fastest growing company in Arizona, top 10 best places to work, and I had hired my team. I loved the people I worked with. And I start thinking about them. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what are they going to think? I sold these people on a dream and I'm going to leave them. Oh my gosh, what will my boss think that I told him I would build this thing with him? What's he going to think? I started looking at all my emails. I have like 200 emails of like chaos that has happened. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what about my clients? Like these parents with special needs kids, like, what are they going to do without me? I pull up to my house. I'm like, oh my gosh, a mortgage. Like, what am I going to do with my mortgage? Right? Like all of these fears, all of these things that we tell ourselves that are holding us back from our potential. And I still knew like I wasn't like, but there was like, well, maybe you could like wait for the whole, like maybe 6 month exit plan. I start making up these practical ways of how I'm going to get out of this life situation. But I start telling Serafina all of these things that happen. Oh my gosh. The day after I talked to you, this happened. Oh my gosh. And then this guy, he took us to like his private waterfall and we spent the whole day there and all these different things. And Serafina's like, did you ever look up a dragonfly? And I'm like, no. She's like, look it up. So I Google dragonfly represents and it just gave me an answer. I didn't go searching. It was just the first thing. A dragonfly in almost every culture represents change, a change of perspective of self-realization, and the understanding of a deeper meaning of life. So in the moment that I've decided I'm going to shift everything around, this dragonfly is like, hey, if you aren't paying attention, I'm just going to die right in front of you, and you're going to look back and remember what I represent. And so I looked at it. I read exactly what I just shared with you. I put the phone down, and I walked into my office the next day, and I gave notice.
Incredible. I love that story. It's funny because as I'm listening to you, I'm reflecting back, and no joke, during this time period for myself, in front of when I would walk out of my office, there were a couple of dragonflies dead in front of my office building.
And this is how we know we're exactly where we're supposed to be in this moment.
Yeah. Wild. So you're in this space now of like, okay, I'm letting these things go. This is how I want to live. now what comes up, right? So like when we start to make these choices, all these others, the sort of the contrast starts to come up, right? Like, so for you, what were the most challenging parts of like sticking to that?
I would say what's really interesting is I made the changes so quick. I was committed. Like I was committed to following my heart and to diving deeper into the practice. I'm kind of lucky, also not lucky. It was my decisions and the things that brought me to these things, but I was gaining knowledge from, you know, these teachers. And so when I went traveling, I I was literally learning, and then I was asking for these certain messages to be taught to me in my experience traveling the world. And every single day, I was not just reading, I was then experiencing the lessons. And
Mm.
so when you talk about challenges, I would say right away I mean, it was again, it was my decision, but through that traveling, I was just in flow for 6 straight months of traveling and experiencing life in a brand new way. When the challenges started coming up was when I got from traveling, because now I'm home, and I my house is rented out, and I wasn't necessarily making money. I was just breaking even on my home. Someone was paying my mortgage, and I didn't have somewhere to live. I didn't have any income. And all of that societal pressure started to come back to me. What are you doing? How could you have, like, all those practical thoughts started to creep in. And the thing that has supported me is really the framework that I've learned and the framework that I've created for myself that allowed me to break through those things, because it would have been really easy. Someone called me and they're like, "Hey, I'm making X amount of money doing pharmaceutical sales. If I could do it, you could make double what I'm doing. I know." He's like, "I'll get you into the company." And it's like, didn't feel right, you know? And so at the time, the one of the biggest and easiest things that helped me through it is to follow what feels exciting. Follow what feels exciting. And that's what led me through to learn how to connect with my body,
Mm.
understand what feels good. If you really pay attention, when someone invites you to their event on, their birthday on Saturday, it's like, of course you want to show up, but like, was there something that you wanted to do and that felt better? And like, are you going to this birthday party because you feel guilt? And so it's like being really aware of what feels exciting and what are you doing because you're trying to, you know, avoid pain of what someone else might be feeling from your decision, right? Um, and so I think that's one of the most important things. And so when the whisper comes through in that way, like a whisper is also a feeling. It's not always, a sound or a vision. It's sometimes exactly how you feel. And so for me, it's number one is that open mind that I talked about. Number two is finding ways to connect with the whisper and to feel connected to yourself. So that can be journaling, that can be um, meditation, yoga, qigong, running, walking in nature, whatever it is that's going to let you fully become an empty vessel to receive the messages. And then after you receive the message, it's the discipline of taking action on it, however big or small. It might be guitar lessons, or it might be leaving your company that you built for the last 10 years. And so I think when I stay connected to those things, and there's different layers to each one of those three, but if I can continue to stay true to my intentions, then that is my compass, and I can avoid the challenges, would be my advice from my own experience.
Yeah, sometimes we tend to Like when you talk about like, am I going to the party because I want to, or because I feel guilt into that? When we're being whispered to, and we don't listen to those things, not only does it can get louder, or it can completely signal to the universe that you're not ready for what's to come. So it kind of just dissipates or goes away until you affirm that you're ready. And again, it's about that feedback. It's like utilizing the feedback. Like, what are you hearing and what are you feeling and what are you seeing? Who are you meeting? Like, all these things are just pulls to like guide you in certain ways, even if the shit doesn't make sense. Sometimes it doesn't even make sense.
I
Like,
think a lot of the times it doesn't.
yeah. It's like, what? You want me to do what exactly? Yeah, that's dope, man. I love that. So you talked about intention. So, like, how important is intention as a part of that process for you?
Yeah, I would say intention is a part of the discipline that keeps you in the flow. And how I mean by that is my intention when I was traveling was to push my comfort zone and experience life in a new way. And every time I would meditate, that was one of my affirmations. Today, I will push my comfort zone and I will experience life in a new way. And that would allow me to say yes to the things that maybe made me a little nervous, or or do the thing that maybe I wouldn't have normally done. And I I think intentions are important rather than goals. I'm not saying I think goals are very important as well, but an intention is the compass. It's the thing that allows you to know, I know that I want to start doing yoga, as an example. And now your friend says, "Hey, come to my birthday party on Saturday." And you had saw this yoga class that you wanted to go to and you didn't have anyone to go to, but you kind of wanted to go. And you know that at this party, even though you can go and do it differently, it's going to be a lot of drinking, a lot of eating junk food, and your intuition was telling you wanted to start doing these things, and you have to know that this is your opportunity to make a new choice. And intention allows you to notice, to be aware that the choice is actually there, instead of going, "Oh my gosh, it's my friend's party, and if I don't show up, he's gonna think this, and that." And instead, it's like, "Hey, I'm choosing this," and knowing that if this person is supposed to be in my life, that they're gonna understand. And I think that's one of the biggest things, when it comes to the community. It's like, it's who loves me when I'm doing the things that are going to be best for me. It doesn't mean I don't show up for my friends and be of service when I need to, but if it comes to like, I need to heal myself or show up and be another person that's at this thing that's going to drink X amount and X, it's,
Yeah,
I'm just using this as an example because these are the
sure.
little choices that had to be made.
Yeah. And it's always in the smaller choices. Like a lot of it is, right? Like it doesn't necessarily have to be like these huge, humongous choices that we make in life. They're really like daily things. And I think part of it too is like understanding yourself. Like in order to have that intention, like you really have to understand and be clear about who you are in a sense of what it is that you need in those moments. So how is this now? So now fast forward, we're here, and as you reflect back, how has this all sort of impacted your life? Like in what ways?
I mean, it's funny because people that meet me now, when I tell them stories about what my life looked like when I was building that company. Even when I was halfway through my first 6 months of travel, Serafina and I met a couple, and we loved them so much that we traveled with them for a month, like breakfast, lunch, dinner, everything together. And my friend JJ would look at me and be like, "I don't see it. I don't see the guy that you're talking about." And it was only 3 months in,
Yeah.
and it's because I made that change. The dragonfly died, my old life died in front of me, and I started a new one. And I'm still the same person, but the things that have changed are, you know I mean, if I'm being honest, at this in this moment, my bank account has changed. It's not the same as it was. But do I feel better about every dollar that I make? Do I feel better about what I'm doing? Do I wake up every morning feeling freedom? Yes. And knowing that all of the things are coming to me and are already with me.
Mm,
And so that's a change, even just that mindset. I have had beautiful experiences. When I think of that moment of like the pharmaceutical job offering, and, I had met this guy that was the CEO of an international art, music, and yoga festival. When I met him around the same time, and I was still doing that affirmation. Today, I will push my comfort zone and experience life in a new way. He reached out to me and said, "Hey, why don't you come live with me in the jungle and help me put on this festival? I need you."
mm,
When he said that,
mm,
I made about the amount of money in a week that I made in 3 months there. But when he asked me, I felt so excited. And that affirmation came up in my mind today. Because there was a moment that it was just like, you're going to do this for this, a moment. But then that affirmation and the feeling, the intention outweighed the practicality.
mm, mm.
And so I went down there and that changed my life. Living in the jungle, I mean, there's so many different things. Being friends with you, we probably wouldn't have attracted each other and been in resonance if I, was in my old life or you were in your old life. My creativity, and sharing my expression, that's different. And I think one of the biggest things is like my engine is love. It always was love because everything is love. But a lot of my engine before was fear,
Mm.
wanting to prove myself, wanting to be prove that I was enough, prove that. And I'm not saying this doesn't still come up, but my like the engine was a fear based engine, and now it's based off of following love and following excitement and following service
Mm.
and knowing that the byproduct is that I will help people. The byproduct is that abundance is here. The byproduct is that I will find all the right people, places, and things that will make my life feel full.
Mm.
I mean, everything has changed, and I'm still G-Wack from San Pedro, California.
Yes. Absolutely. That's a beautiful thing. It really is. I want to get into your book. It's funny because I remember a moment when we were in a workshop and we were sharing like our writings and I pictured something different than this. But I shared that with you, right? I said, it feels like a stage show, which you ended up actually doing, which is beautiful, one man show. But tell us about this new book, children's book called Stardust.
A
What's
journey to
A
remember.
Journey to Remember? How did this unfold for you?
So a lot of following the whispers, and well, let me just first say what it is because I feel like I've caught myself telling all the story of why and what it was about. But it is about a character named Naledi who's traveling inner and outer universes to remember the miracle that it is to be alive, and
Mm,
that this character is collecting these gifts from these perceived, bad, quote unquote, bad things, and learns that, through these challenges, there are gifts, and these gifts help us to shine bright. And how it came about is, I mean, I already told a little part of it. I wrote this poem. And, my mom named it Stardust, and it made me feel connected to my grandfather. And then I started sharing, as you know, and as we talked about, my poetry out in the world, not just for myself. And they were always for myself. But now they're everyone's that, when someone makes a song and I'm like, oh, this is my song, or this is our song, once I release it, it's no longer mine. And so as I shared, I would get reflections from people. I want this for my kids. Oh, I showed this to my daughter. My daughter had a really hard day and I showed her this video. You should make these into children's books. Um, and so I hear this. I'm listening. I'm responding to what is coming to me, and there was a part of me at some point. There's these whispers. There's a thought, and so when the world is reflecting back what the whisper is telling me, I get to decide to take action on the whisper. And so, I mean, it was crazy. I mean, how it all laid out. You know, someone asked me if I would go on a hike with him and his friend. We did that, and this friend ends up being an amazing illustrator. I didn't know that at the time. We just had a really deep connection. And a couple weeks later, I had a dream. I don't ever remember my dreams, but I woke up and one of my Stardust was depicted in a children's book. And I found out over that 2 weeks that this guy that I went on the hike with was an amazing illustrator for a K through 12 online school. And so I hit him up and I said, hey, I just had this dream. And is to me, that's another opportunity for a whisper. Like, oh, I had this dream. Maybe there's something there. I had been getting the messages from all these people. I had an internal message that I wanted to create something like that. Hit him up. And over a year, we met every 2 weeks and we created this book. And through that process, we talked about the one man show. I shared, and that was part of it. Your little message was a part of me deciding that that was something that I was going to do, and it still hasn't fully expressed itself, you know. So I think I'm thinking still how you might have been thinking in some way, shape, or form. Um, the day after I shared that poem, that you were there, thank you for coming. I was invited to speak at a New York Times bestselling authors annual conference the next day. Because another whisperer had told me to create a video for one of my poems, and they saw that video. They messaged me, and a year later, they had decided the day they saw it, they were going to book me for their event the next year. I just didn't know it. So the day I put my flag down and say, I have this whole experience, they asked me, and I knew exactly what I was going to do. I was going to share that same experience at their event. After that event, this couple came up to me. They were the last people there. They're like, you talk about following the whisper, so we wanted to follow ours and tell you something. I was like, go ahead. And they're like, yeah, what was the last poem you told yesterday? Because I got to speak both days. They were like, I was like, but it was Stardust. And they said, yeah, you spoke that poem. You walked off stage. And when you walked off stage, we looked at each other, and at the exact same time, we said, that needs to be a kid's book. And we just had to tell you that. And I was already on a high that this couple felt that my poetry was worth their stage 2 of their 2-day conference. And I'm already feeling so connected that the universe is saying yes to everything I'm doing. And then this couple, who were the last people there, felt like they needed to tell me that. And I had just started turning that poem of the 10 that I told that weekend into a children's book. And I showed them the first renderings of the main character. Wow. And to me, that was like, I went home and I was like, we're making this book. Like before that, we were just having fun. And we still had fun the whole time. But I'm saying we were just meeting and seeing what was coming through, being playful, surrendering. And to me, that was like the last sign. It was just like, you got to make this book.
Right. Wow. Whew, I love that shit. That gives me chills. What do you see? So I obviously supported. I have a niece who's a year old.
Thank you.
And I definitely, want her to have this book. It's just really cool to see things that you're creating in the world and like the expression of them forming into all these different things, It's one of the things that I love the most when I get to see people do that. What do you hope, or what's your vision for like this now, for this book?
Yeah, so my vision is I already have Naledi, the main character, already has 2 sequels written and mapped out. They're just not created yet. And so I could see if people want these for their kids. And I don't know if that is coming through because they want to have something that allows the messages that I'm sharing to be given to them. I'm I try to ask questions and fully understand, but I'm really just saying yes. I'm not trying to get too practical about it. I'm just following the whispers and saying yes. I could see, creating these books because it is a kid's book, but I actually feel like it's just as much for the parents that are reading it to the children. And honestly, even if someone has no kids, it's a little affirmation with beautiful art that's deep that an adult will fully enjoy. I'm calling it a kidult's book. I'm not much of a marketer, so I'm not like I don't know how to market it in that way. It's just what I know is true because people that see it, they don't like adults that see it that don't have kids are like this is dope, you
Mm.
know. Um, and that's what I want. I want it to be like a treasure that you can open and be reminded that we're miracles. That's one thing that I talk about an open mind. This book is in a way a poem that not only reminds you that you're a miracle, but it also reminds you that you're on a rock blasting through space. And if you think, or if I think I have all the answers, like we don't even know. We know so little. And so I just want this book to be like, if even for an adult, it could be something on their counter that has really great art, and they're kind of going through a hard time. You read it and you're reminded, like we're all a part of this crazy universe, and we're
Mm.
all absolute miracles. And so that is what I have for this book. But I can see like a series of this character Naledi going through again inner and outer universes. It's inner and outer because some of the things might actually not be happening. Some of these things are actually like internal, but they're depicted through characters that Naledi is meeting, and so I can see this being something that impacts generations. Like I really do believe that, and I don't think that I've never seen anything like it, and I know just from my niece Mia, who's 5, and I call her the expert because it's insane. I created it with the intention for it to be something that children can grow into and also prove to us that they're way more perceptive than we believe. Because it is how is it for all ages? How
Mm.
is that possible?
Mm.
Because the art tells a story that's the same story but in a different way. And so for the adults, it means something deeper, and for the children, it's this character is collecting these gifts, and there's messages, and so like she says things that blow my mind, and
Mm.
so to me, she's proof that my intention is being fulfilled, and I want to, and I'm having fun. I'm having so much fun, and so that along with all the little whispers and breadcrumbs, and so I could see us making a series that is like maybe storytelling with poetry in there and the characters expressing it. Um, I can see, yeah, just a lot of the lessons that we love about, perspective and about the universe and about emotional intelligence, like played through a character and played through that both adults and children can gain from. So I would say that's my vision for that. And that is just one avenue of my expression, but it does feel like I'm being called to continue to pour energy into that.
That's beautiful, man. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Really, really special. I'm very proud of you, man. Oh, this has been a blast. Are you ready to share a piece?
Yeah, and I'm trying to decide like should I share that poem or actually I have a poem on flow, and then I also have the universe speaks, and I'm just trying saying it out loud because I'm trying to feel into, maybe I should just take a breath and feel into which one actually
Yeah.
is like because these poems are messages that I received at certain times, and I'm just trying to feel into like what's been the biggest, what's been in this the most that feels the most resonant. I feel like I want to do the universe speaks, and I want to do that one because I think it embodies the idea of open mindedness. It embodies flow, and it embodies that there's something bigger than us at play that for me to name it, I can't really name it, so all I can do is express it through these experiences. So this poem came through me around the time where I was kind of like going, it always comes up when there's, something's kind of conflicting and I need to be reminded of what I know. And so you'll hear all these little moments and it's me reflecting on these moments that happened to me.
Mm.
And it's funny because in this poem particularly, it starts like me questioning things and me like remembering things. And then it's funny because it's like my higher self comes in and just like asserts the truth. Uh, and so I just get to like be like, oh, thank you. And where did that come from? So this poem is called The Universe Speaks. And for anyone that's listening, I would just say, let's all just take one big deep breath in together. A dragonfly lands on top of my knee in the moment that I'm having a deeper meaning of me. Scorpio, Libra, and the full moon aligned. If there was a doubt, they told me it's time. I ask about someone and bring up his name. A truck pulls right up, and out the door he came. I know that we are supposed to meet. It weighs on me a ton. And it all finally happens as the moon eclipses the sun. I write down that I'm in the right place, and wouldn't you know, I look down and there's a dragonfly on my toe. And when I first met my mentor, the story would be dope. If when I was washing my hands at his house, there's a dragonfly under his soap. This all really happened. I can't make this stuff up. The more I trust the universe, the more it speaks up. And the more intention I put into the universe's way, the more aware I am of what it has to say. So look around. Be open to the magic. The only difference between the people that do and don't have it is just the belief that it actually happens. So let go. Listen. Trust. It's actually quite fun. And believing in miracles won't hurt anyone. You'll still have ups and downs. Oh, you'll go for a ride, but you'll go from crawling to walking to taking in stride. If you pay attention, the universe won't hide because the universe speaks and it will always provide.
Yes, sir. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Brother, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you, man. Absolutely beautiful. Best of luck with everything. Tell the people where they can find you, where they can find your book.
Yes. Well, you can find me at Instagram at G__link. That's G-Link. I also have a website, GarrettBrill.com. And the book will eventually be able to be found at StardustBook.com. But we just finished our Kickstarter, which was successful. So thank you for being a part of it. And it will be available in November or December this year for people that weren't a part of the Kickstarter. So look out for it. And I'm hoping that it will be, a treasured keepsake for families and also a household name for generations to benefit from. That's my hope, and that's what I trust, and I'm open for that.
It's all miracles.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for being who you be, and let's get together.
Absolutely, brother. Yeah, I would love that. I would love that. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you, everybody, for listening. This is my brother, Garrett Brill, G-Link. Please hit him up if you have any questions, if you want to book him for some shows, whatever. Just hit him up. This is the One Podcast. Peace.
Loving yourself